Moving on to our next speaker, there's clearly a theme at the moment between Sandra and Tony, what Brigid is talking about, and also what Nick is talking about, which is food. And so Brigid is going to be our next presenter. She studied cooking in London and in Paris, worked on around the world on yachts for 3 years. I've worked on a super yacht once myself, and I know just how hard slog that actually is. Oh my God, you have no idea what they expect you to do. What stays on the boat? What stays on the boat, right? She started a thing called Simmer on the Bay in Walsh Bay, a successful event and venue business on the water for 10 years. One of only 2 venues privately owned on the harbour in Sydney. 8 years ago, created the Walsh Bay Arts and Commerce and Arts Alliance, and got all the Sydney arts companies working together, which must have been, I think I have a challenge herding cats, right? That must have been diabolical. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And brought Vivid to Walsh Bay, amongst other things. 4 years ago, she bought another property in Berrima and started the Lock journey, opening the farm gate for farm vegetables and meats a year ago and luxury accommodation. Voted in 2014 Business Leader of Sydney. Joined the Moss Vale Chamber of Commerce this year in January and is the current Vice President. Opened and funded the pilot cluster of Joadja, thank you, God, how do I say that? For the Southern Highland Food and Wine Cluster in October. Welcome, Brigid.
So, thanks Peter for giving me the introduction. I do have some runs on the board in terms of collaboration. When I first started in Walsh Bay, the arts community would come to me at my cafe and ask me to get somebody else to turn their music down during rehearsals. And I thought, God, you've all got the same employer being Arts New South Wales. How is it that you don't talk to each other? So much the same with the food and wine groups. We've had a wonderful organisation trying to keep them all, get them all together in the Southern Highlands Food and Wine Association, and also our wonderful pioneer, if you'd stand up for us, Jill, who had the food path, bringing everybody together, and have done a fabulous job. What we're doing though with the clusters is on a more intimate basis, I suppose. Instead of what we've found is when you're creating community, you need to have smaller groups. A lot of them need quite a lot of encouragement in terms of how to open. In my business with the Lock, we were able to show them that you can make money out of being open only one day. Now, for some people that are food producers, it is being open one day. I mean, we pay our mortgage off one day and a bit of accommodation, so plus our staff and our stock. So being open one day can make an enormous difference. It puts you in touch with your consumer, and you get that supply and demand. So by me being able to show our food growers, for example, on how to do that, it means that we're able to collaborate far more food and wine spaces to open. So some of them are opening, like our Your Farmer, who has a very unique brand of beef called Hairy Herefords. They're only opening twice a month. Our Taste of Alpaca will also be only open twice a month. And then we've got our fabulous cornerstone businesses that are at capacity on the weekends. So everybody has their own drivers about why they belong to the cluster. Everybody has various needs on what we can give them in providing information. So Binduli, for example, you think, I can never get in there, but they need capacity building through the week. So instead of us dictating to people what it is that they need, we ask them, how can we help you, and what do we need? So when I first met Jill, I thought that there was enough for a weekend, but we have she gave me 110 names of businesses that are already established in the Southern Highlands, and I went, well, that's not a weekend, that's clusters, that's regions within regions. So since we've also established our pilot, it's been enormous, the amount of people who have then stepped forward. Just in the Joadja cluster, for example, we have another 5 businesses in the next year who are going to open and join us. So it's very exciting. You know, with Moss Vale, we initially started with, which is our next cluster to open, we initially started with 6 businesses. Now there's 13 ready to open. With the one after that we're opening is in Robertson, and we initially had 14 businesses, and now there's 23 businesses that want to open with our clusters. Now, that's very exciting stuff, and it's great to see in our first pilot how things have become very community minded. You know, and talking about how things work up in Walsh Bay with everybody swapping resources, with everybody sharing databases, with everybody sharing their knowledge, you know, creating this brains trust of all wanting the same thing, which is more business. But also to create that village. Now, if you have 120, 130 businesses, the small ones get lost in the mire. They have bigger voices, and that all have got bigger business, and that's largely what a lot of the tourism have been focused on, the big, larger businesses. But what the consumer really wants is to see the local farmer. They want to meet the farmer. They want to find out what they're doing, get some tips off them about, how to grow their vegetables. I spend most of my day on a Sunday wandering around saying, what if you companion plant here or do this here? That stops them off, or this is something that's organic that you can use and spray on your vegetable. It gives the caterpillar a stomach ache, and they die. So, but it means you can still eat that vegetable 10 minutes later. So there's a lot of learning that can happen, and within our own clusters, we had, when we first took everybody around, to all the individuals to meet the other individuals, one farmer sort of saw how somebody else was processing, and they were only using their processing area 1 day a week. Oh, well, can we use that then? And so they're now sort of starting to work together and how to because you don't know what you don't know. And that's certainly how I started, is not knowing what the others needed. And so building our capacity in our website, for example. So instead of it just being about the weekends, now we're about plan your visit. It's, for those people who want to build their capacity midweek, we have make a plan for midweek. We also have those that are really busy in the weekend, other places to go and visit in the weekend. Then we have a seasonal offering for those people who normally wouldn't be able to get all the information out there about being open in the winter, say for example for the truffles and the mushroom, some of the mushroom growers, and then for the the berry growers and what have you. So this is a vehicle that's got a lot of information on it, and there's maps, there's also all the little tricky bits, like if you have to go down to the Joadja distillery, how you get there in terms of it's a warning about the car that you've got to be using. So and it's also primarily creating perpetual motion. Our little 11 members are so excited about each other that as soon as you go to leave there, they say, right, well, make sure you go and visit X, or make sure you go and visit Y. And that then creates this perpetual motion. So when there's all of the 130 businesses open, that'll be, for my mind, 130 businesses promoting me, just as I'm promoting 130 other businesses. So it becomes a really exciting thing. You get a lot of pride in where you live, but by being able to introduce just to our locals, we had taken a stand at the Food and Wine Fair, and also at the Home and Garden. And when you're asking locals, how many places do you know to go and visit? And they haven't got any idea. So this is a vehicle to give them 130 places to go to. So it's going to take us a year and a half to open all the clusters. The reason for that is so that everybody gets their own showcase. Now, for our showcase in this first instance, we've got 3 months, and the amount of PR and interest just in this one cluster is really exciting. So yesterday we had Channel 7 down. They came to see 5 of the businesses and are excited to see the rest. We've had Sydney Morning Herald down already for the good food. We've had Australian Country. We've had News Limited are on the way. Country Style are putting us in their produce section and are coming down to do a big feature. We've had the Highlands Post doing something, which is great. There's High Life are doing a big feature on us in December. And those are just a small fraction of the 9 that are coming just to see Joadja. And we have 9 others to open subsequently. So the 9 others, and what's happened beautifully in the opening, which was 2 weeks ago, is people from all of the other clusters are coming to put their hand up and say, Canyon Lee, the two country chefs said, we want to help open the Canyon Lee cluster. Jesse's going to open the Moss Vale cluster and the Robertson one. So everybody's sort of sticking up their hand to go, I'm part of this community. I want to do my bit. Now I have, for the first initial part, everybody's talking about investment and where to get investment and how to start their projects and who's going to give me money. Well, I put my hand in my own pocket for this one. 45 grand it cost me to open the first cluster. And you'd say, well, why would I do that? Why put that in when it's benefiting everybody else? Well, creating that perpetual motion makes good business sense. I can only get to my place, I'll eventually be in all the publications, but what happens then? What happens to my business after I've been in every publication? So I'm going to rely on my community to also promote my space. So I learnt that because when I brought Vivid down to Walsh Bay, I was going to everybody, all the arts organisations, would you help me? Would you help me? You've got all the equipment. Couldn't we do something to showcase that we can do Vivid down here? No. All too hard. So I did put my hand in my pocket there as well. Now, it might have cost me 12 grand plus a lot of favours to get 12 installations open that first time, but I made 27,000. So always asking for money and putting handouts isn't always the way. Sometimes you've just got to show people the way. And by believing it in yourself, then all of the other places all get that encouragement for what you are doing as well. So why our system's working? We're working with wonderful Steve Rosa, for example, who's really supporting us and gives me a lot of information and help. We're working with DNSW. They're sort of giving us a little bit of shaping on how to work with all the other clusters and are talking to us about funding as well. We're looking at doing new systems as well. There's a GPS system where Steve had given us a great contact of a fellow who wants to open a GPS system with all our projects, so that when you come past somebody who's in the cluster, all of a sudden it comes up on your phone. So it's working with the new technologies and what's going to happen there. Now, don't look on the website for it right now because it's coming, but it is in the drawing board. The reason why people are all coming on board is we have a low investment threshold. So for them to come on board, it's about being in the chamber. Now that means that when I get tired and go back to running my own business, there is an entire chamber that will assist with this. That means that the funds are there to always keep it refreshed. that somebody is employed to always keep the ones going on, the ones going off. As soon as you have one business that's not open on your website, it all of a sudden becomes tired and people think, oh, it's not working anymore. So it's creating that perpetual motion, and that is where, there is the change in this, is that we've created that opportunity and the funds available to pay somebody to make sure that it's always refreshed. The other thing that makes it work is that it is all-inclusive, and that we listen to our members. What are your needs? And so we don't dictate it, we ask them what their requirements are. And that's making a major difference to us. So the benefits to the Highlands and where we see what's happening and what's happening already is that it's about creating entrepreneurship. It's about a collective brains trust, that we all learn from each other. And I'm a bit of a conduit at the moment, but there will be more, and so is Jill, but there are more of that coming. As you learn one from another, you go, oh, well, I heard about such and such, they're doing this, why don't you go and ask them? And it's that collective thinking that's creating community. And these areas that are all here are already creating community. They're really enjoying each other's company. They're really enthusiastic about each other's product. They're selling each other's product, and they're selling on for this is where you've got to go next. We're seeing already a jobs market increase. We're seeing overnight stays happening, so that instead of it being a day trip, the team from Channel 7 yesterday said, God, there's no way we could do this in a day. And I said, no, so stay overnight. So, we want to improve Steve Rose's numbers in terms of overnight stays. So what are our challenges? Our challenges, look, elephant in the room, Hume Coal's going to be a challenge. They start drilling through the aquifer. What's that going to do for our water? So, please all get on board for that issue and don't ignore it like it's going away. They're going to bugger up our reputation in terms of being a clean environment. We had Alan Morrell talking about China coming in. Now, the reason China is so enthusiastic about buying our produce is because they don't trust their own, And while they don't trust their own, that's where they'll come to a clean environment to buy their food. So, we really have to be thinking about what happens there and take some responsibilities in collective thinking. We have, at the moment, an antiquated LEP that is going to be with us for the next 18 months. So we need to make sure that shaping of the next LEP is going to be very conducive to working with our farmers and agritourism, and what is available even in the hunter that is not available here. You've got some wonderful people like Barry Anstey, for example, who's got some great ideas of how to further, a Tempest 2, for example, down here, that would be a brilliant, brilliant idea. But in this LEP, it's just not possible. So a bit of pressure on council to make sure that happens. And I know Mr Scandrett is on top of that. Capacity building of all of our members. That's one of the reasons why it's quite slow for us to open, because everybody needs, the smaller ones need mentoring on how to open and what their framework is going to be like, is going to look like. My partner Kevin, for example, would hate it if we opened any more than one day a week. When you're darling. But how to make sure that one day a week everybody knows and comes to you. So creating demand and then being able to eat that to meet that demand is going to be a little bit lumpy initially, and that's why working with everybody and in smaller groups makes sense, so that you work with them. If you're trying to do it all at once, it is too hard, but you do with it all in smaller groups, and everybody can work out how it's going to work and how it's going to work for them. So everybody talks about what it is that they're after. Okay, so we're looking at is a 3-stage program. So we have the pilot open, that's stage 1. And it's really working very well already in terms of interest in, from PR point of view. We've had very limited information about even being open, but already the trails of people coming through following their maps is really quite exciting. The other 9 will be open in the next 18 months. The Moss Vale's open in February, Robertson will be open in March, Canyon Lee for May, and then we follow the others through. Then we have the whole rest of, once we have this as a pilot program all working, it's how do we develop the entire thing? How do we take that food back to Sydney? So we have conduits ready to go back for that are already delivering back there. So that for that sustainability, as chefs join that motion, that we can then be on that 100-kilometre edge, and they will take our food back up to there. So the cross-promotional opportunities, we would like to collaborate with everybody here in terms of getting our name out as we will your own once that comes through. We would like to partner with universities to research what we're doing economically, culturally and socially. And of course, technology marketing, all those sort of things we're looking for resources for, but we have some of that in hand, but anything more, by all means, give me a call. Thank you.